She wanted to have a vampire lover. She wanted it so badly that she kept waiting for it to happen. One night soon she would awaken to wings flapping against the window, and then take to wearing velvet ribbons and cameo lockets around her delicate, pale neck. She knew it. She immersed herself in the world of her vampire lover. She devoured Gothic romances, consumed late-night horror movies. Visions of satin capes and eyes of fire shielded her from the harshness of the daylight, from mortality and the vain and meaningless struggles of the world of the sun. Days as a kindergarten teacher, and evenings with some overly eager casual acquaintance, could not pull her from a secret existence. Always a ticking portion of her brain planned, proceeded, waited. She spent her meagre earnings on dark antiques and intricate clothes. Her wardrobe was crammed with white negligées and ruffled underthings. No crosses and no mirrors, particularly not in her bedroom. White tapered candles stood in pewter sconces, and she would read late into the night by their smoky flickerings. She scented and ruffled, hair combed loosely about her shoulders. She glanced at the window often. She resented lovers, though she took them, thrilling to the fullness of life in them, the blood and the life, who insisted on staying all night, burning their breakfast toast and making bitter coffee. Her kitchen, of course, held nothing but fresh ingredients and copper and ironware. To her chagrin, she could not do without ovens or stoves or refrigerators. Alone, she carried candles and bathed in cool water. She waited, prepared, and at long last her vampire lover began to come to her in her dreams. They floated across the moors, glided through the fields of heather. He carried her to his crumbling castle, undressing her, pulling off her diaphanous gown, caressing her lovely body until, in the height of passion, he bit into her arched neck, drawing the life out of her and replacing it with eternal damnation and eternal love. She woke from these dreams drenched in sweat and feeling exhausted. The kindergarten children would find her unusually quiet and self-absorbed, and it frightened them when she rubbed her spotless neck and smiled wistfully. Soon and soon and soon, her veins chanted, in prayer and anticipation. Soon. The children were her only regret. She would not miss her inquisitive relatives and friends, the ones who frowned and studied her as if she were portrayed as someone they knew they were supposed to recognize. Those who urged her to drop by for an hour, to come with them to films, to accompany them to the seashore. Those who were connected to her, or thought they were, by the mere gesturing of the long and milky hands of fate, who sought to distract her from her one true passion, who sought to discover the secret of that passion. For, true to the sacredness of her vigil for her vampire lover, she had never spoken of him to a single earthly, earthbound soul. It would be beyond them, she knew. They would not comprehend a bond of such intention sacrifice. But she would regret the children. Never would a child of their love coo and murmur in the darkness. Never would his proud and noble features soften at the sight of the mother and her child of his loins. It was her single sorrow. Her vacation was coming. June hovered like a mist, and the children squirmed in anticipation. Their own true lives would begin in June. She empathized with the shining eyes and smiling faces, knowing their wait was as agonizing as her own. Silently, as the days closed in, she bade each of them a tender farewell, holding them as they threw their little arms round her neck, and pressed fervent summer-time kisses on her cheeks. She booked her passage to London on a ship, then to Romania, Bulgaria, Transylvania, the hereditary seat of her beloved, the fierce, violent backdrop of her dreams. Her suitcases opened themselves to her long false skirts and her brooches and lockets. She peered into a hand mirror as she packed it. "I am getting pale," she thought, and the idea both terrified and delighted her. She became paler, thinner, more exhausted as her trip wore on. After recovering from the disappointment of the raucous modern cruise ship, she raced across the continent to find refuge in the creaky trains and taverns she had so yearned for. Her heart thrilled as she meandered past the black silhouettes of ruined fortresses and ancient manor houses. She sat for hours in the mists, praying for the howling wolf to find her, for the bat to come and join her. She took to drinking wine in bed, deep, rich, blood-red Burgundy that glowed in the candlelight. She melted into the landscape within days, and cringed as if from the crucifix itself when flickers of her past life, her American false existence, invaded her serenity. She did not keep a diary. She did not count the days as her summer slipped away from her. She only rejoiced that she grew weaker. It was when she was counting out the coins for a gypsy shawl that she realized she had no time left. Tomorrow she must make for Frankfurt, and from there fly back to New York. The shopkeeper nudged her, inquiring if she was ill, and she left with her treasure, trembling. She flung herself on her own rented bed. "This will not do, this will not do," she pleaded with the darkness. "You must come for me tonight. I have done everything for you, my beloved, love you above all else. You must save me." She sobbed until she ached. She skipped her last meal of veal and paprika and sat quietly in her room. The innkeeper brought her yet another bottle of Burgundy, and after she assured him she was quite all right, just a little tired, he wished his guest a pleasant trip home. The night wore on. Though her book was open before her, her eyes were riveted to the windows. Her hands clenched around the wine-glass as she sipped steadily, like a creature feeding. Oh, to feel him against her veins, emptying into her and filling her. Soon and soon and soon. Then all at once it happened. The windows rattled, flapped inward. A great shadow, a curtain of ebony, fell across the bed, and the room began to whirl faster, faster still, and she was consumed with a bitter, deathly chill. She heard rather than saw the wine-glass crash to the floor, and struggled to keep her eyes open as she was overwhelmed, engulfed, taken. "It is you," she managed to whisper through teeth that rattled with delight and cold and terror. "It is finally to be." Freezing hands touched her everywhere, her face, her breasts, the desperate offering of her arched neck. Frozen and strong and never dying, sinking, she smiled in a rictus of mortal dread and exultation. Eternal damnation, eternal love. A vampire lover had come for her at last. When her eyes opened, she let out a howl and shrank against the searing brilliance of the sun. Hastily they closed the curtains and quickly told her where she was. Home again, where everything was warm and pleasant, and she was safe from the disease that had nearly killed her. She had been ill before she had left the States. By the time she had reached Transylvania, her anemia had been acute. Had she never noticed her own pallor, her lassitude? Anemia. Her smile was a secret on her white lips. So they thought, but he had come for her again and again. In her dreams, and on that night, he had meant to take her finally to his castle forever, to crown her the best beloved one, his love of the moors and the mists. She had but to wait, and he would finish the deed. Soon and soon and soon. She let them fret over her, wrapping her in blankets in the last days of summer. She endured the forced cheer of her relatives, allowing them to feed her rich food and drink in hopes of restoring her. but her stomach could no longer hold the nourishment of their kind. They wrung their hands and talked of stronger measures, when it became clear that she was wasting away. At the urging of the doctor, she took walks, small ones at first, on painfully thinned feet. Swathed in wool, cowering behind sunglasses, she took tiny steps like an old woman. As she moved through the summer hours, her neck burned with an ungovernable pain that would not cease until she rested in the shadows. Her stomach lurched to the sight of grocery store windows. But at the butcher's she paused and licked her lips at the sight of the raw, bloody meat. But she did not go to him. She grew neither worse nor better. "I am trapped," she whispered to the night as she stared into the flames of a candle by her bed. "I am disappearing between your world and mine, my beloved. Help me. Comfort me." She rubbed her neck, which ached and throbbed, but showed no outward signs of his devotion. Her throat was parched, bone dry, but water did not quench her thirst. At long last she dreamed again. Her vampire lover came for her as before, joyous in their reunion. They soared above the crooked trees at the foothills, streamed like black banners above the mountain crags to his castle. He could not touch her enough, worship her enough, and they were wild in their abandon as he carried her in her diaphanous gown to the gates of his fortress. But at the entrance he shook his head with sorrow, and could not let her pass into the black realm with him. His fiery eyes seared her neck, and she thrilled to the touch of the mark, even as she cried out for him as he left her, fading into the vapours with a look of entreaty in his dark, flashing eyes. Something was missing. He required a boon of her before he could bind her against his heart, a thing that she must give to him. She walked in the sunlight, enfeebled, cowering. She thirsted, hungered, yearned. Still she dreamt of him, and still he could not take the last of her unto himself. Days and nights and days. Her steps took her finally to the schoolyard, where once, only months before, she had embraced and kissed the children, thinking never to see them again. They were all there, who had kissed her cheeks so eagerly. Their silvery laughter was like the tinkling of bells, as dust motes from their games and antics whirled about their feet. How free they seemed to her, who was so troubled, how content and at peace. The children. She shambled forward, eyes widening behind the shields of smoky glass. He required something of her first, her one regret, her only sorrow. She thirsted. The burns on her neck pulsated with pain. Tears of gratitude welled in her eyes for the revelation that had not come too late. Weeping, she pushed open the gate of the schoolyard and reached out a skeleton limb to a child standing apart from the rest, engrossed in a solitary game of cat's cradle. Tawny-headed, ruddy-cheeked, filled with the blood and the life. For him, as a token of their love. "My little one, do you remember me?" she said softly. The boy turned and smiled back uncertainly, in innocence and trust. Then she came for him, swooping down on him like a great winged thing, with eyes that burned through the glasses, teeth that flashed once, twice.